Participants identifying information, such as voices, usernames, or any other personal data, has been removed and/or replaced by this generic voiceover in order to protect their privacy. Join us as we recap our Q2 conference call held on April 1, 2023, featuring founder Vincenzo Aiello and CSO William Musa. They tackled a wide range of topics, from the current progress of the sheep trials to the customization of the procedure for the unique conditions of each patient. What's the timeline for the next iteration of the animal trials?
Now we have to request approval to the Ministry of Health and the Bioethics Committee for Protection of Animals. So there are two entities. And, it's going to take like 4 or 5 months. That's what the scientists said. And then probably, in September, we are going to finish this second part of experiment with sheep.
What are the goals to accomplish with the next iteration of the animal trials?
Basically, so far we have installed the foreskin flat over the sheep. Now we have to build it vertically, so which means that we have to do different things. We have to build the foreskin and we have to avoid, that's what we are expecting, that the two layers of the foreskin attach each other. So we have to separate this. This will be the first goal. But obviously the main goal is to bring the blood vessels from the bottom to the top. If we have a structure, a height like 5 centimeters, I'm sure that the first 5 millimeters we will have blood vessels. But how we can bring the blood vessels to the top? So this is what we want to achieve.
Who are the researchers and surgeons currently working for Foregen?
Well, right now we are working with the Dottoressa Elena Pondioli and Dr. Michele Riccio, who is the plastic surgeon that is going to work with the human trial. But since the kind of surgery is pretty complex, we would like also to hire a urologist who is specialized, a surgeon urologist who is specialized in sex change, because they have a lot of experience about this. Even it's not the same of surgery, but they can, especially in microsurgery, they can give us what we don't have.
Will the regenerated foreskin look and feel exactly as if I was uncut?
So when the clinical trials, or the human clinical trials start, is likely going to be in 2024 if everything goes on track. And a big part of that, and a big part of the dedication from the Italian team, is making sure that everything is ready to go and that surgery is perfected before we get to that point. So there's a lot of other stuff going on behind the scenes that we might not always talk about. So while this other animal trial is going on, the surgeon is very hard at work collaborating with the veterinarian team, collaborating with the researchers, collaborating with us in the United States. And he's spending a lot of time in a facility with cadavers, perfecting this technique, perfecting the surgery itself. That's one of the things I'm actually very happy with the Italians that are over there. They might not have the same connection to this issue that we have, especially if you're from the US or another country that performs circumcision quite often. They're taking it with a very serious professional aspect, but they do care a lot for how this technique and how this surgery comes out, that we are 100%, that somebody who's getting this surgery is 100% satisfied.
What will the surgery be like?
It's kind of like a burying technique. It's not just one attachment point. It's like the whole cylindrical site. And also working with that surgeon, he's trying to modify and change that surgery in real time to make it as effective and aesthetically pleasing as possible. So at this time, I really can't speak to that accurately, but he's definitely working on that. But it's a great question about the decellularized ECM attachment points and how many there are. I really can't give you a solid answer because that might change in a couple months here as he's optimizing that surgery. But right now, it's a burying technique where they bury the decellularized matrix underneath your donor matrix, and there's a second portion of the surgery later where they remove it and then attach it to the site, the actual like physical site. So your body's acting as its own bioreactor, so to speak.
Will there be any scars after the surgery?
Okay, I mean, no, that is a real concern. That's definitely something that the surgeon, Dr. Michele, we've talked about that, and that's part of what he wants to make sure is minimized in the surgical process. We've also talked about the potential use of stem cells. So there's a technique in plastic surgery especially used. They actually take some of your fat out, like in a liposuction type procedure, and they extract adipose-derived stem cells. And those stem cells can help with situations like that, and they can actually help accelerate the healing process and the integration. So that's definitely an option that we want to explore as we progress. I mean, don't forget, right now we're in the animal trials. So there's a lot of ideas, but we have to kind of minimize the variables as we're working with the animal trial to get that passed. And once that gets passed, we can go, we can do the second animal trial. Like once we get this second animal trial done, we can add more variables and try to, build the better mousetrap, so to speak.
Will the surgery be tailored to specific needs?
That's a great question. Thank you. And there's some of you that may have started going through like a stretching restoration process. So I think this ties into that as well. And the answer to that is every surgery is going to be tailored. And that's one of the things that we've talked with the surgeon about. And that's one of the reasons I'm very impressed and happy with his level of professionalism and how much he cares about this. Part of it is he wants to make sure he meets with every patient, does a pre-op with every patient, and understands what that surgery is going to have to look like. Every surgery is going to be slightly different. Speaking to your point, so everyone's going to be a different size, everyone's going to have a different level, and every circumcision is going to be slightly different, if not drastically different. So to answer that, every donor is also going to be different. To that end, trying to select the best donor sample for the best patient sample is going to be part of it. Another part of it, which again we have discussed, and after the initial human clinical trials are over, something that we have discussed and will likely be another project is using bioreactors to expand on a donor sample. So like think of a donor sample that's like 2 centimeters square, so about 1 inch square, and then being able to grow that or expand that, stretching that out, so to speak, to about double that size or however much is needed to complete the surgery for that patient. So definitely real concerns, something we're still thinking about right now. But the short answer is, especially for the human clinical trial, matching the best donor sample with the best patient sample and different surgical techniques to accomplish what is needed.
Will the frenulum be regenerated too?
We have to consider the elasticity of the tissue, and when we transplant the foreskin over the patient, it may be possible that the frenulum impedes. It could be a problem. What we want is that the tissue rolls very well up and down. And if we add also a frenulum, this is just my idea. We haven't spoken about this yet. We haven't decided yet how to work with the frenulum. But I was thinking last night, talking with Elena, that it can be a problem and it can create a tight foreskin again.
Do you mean that the frenulum won't be regenerated?
No. It was just, last night we were talking with Elena Bondioli about this problem. And she said that she saw a study, she read a study about the frenulum of the mouth of a baby, and that she wanted to check and study very well that study to perform the frenulum. But what I'm saying, I'm not saying that we will not do the frenulum. Together with the scientists, we will decide when it will be the right time. We're already putting a kind of tissue that we don't know how much elastic will be. We want it to be elastic, and we already know from the resistance test that we did at the University of Bologna that the tissue is extremely elastic. It can work very well, and maybe William can help me to describe this. But what I'm saying, what about if I put you a foreskin that then is too tight because of the frenulum? You see what I mean? These are only doubts that I have.
I think part of what Enzo's trying to say is that there's a lot of hurdles that we're coming into, and some of those are trying to make sure that we do the best job and that we make exactly, we recreate exactly what was removed in the first place, and we don't cause issues. So another issue that people bring up sometimes is like, what is the chance of the phimosis after a procedure, something like that. And these are all things that we have to have answers for the surgical board before and then after it passes HCT, especially if we're getting other surgeons on board. The last thing we want to do is have somebody have a successful reconstruction and they go to a surgeon for a minor issue. The surgeon's answer is like, oh, we need to remove your foreskin because you have phimosis. There's a lot of variables that we're trying to have answers for before going directly into the human clinical trial. Right now, we're focused on recreating a complete and natural foreskin, copying the foreskin in its natural state.
How is the histologic study going?
So with histologics, they actually had another setback with obtaining more samples for us, and it looks like that hurdle has been overcome, but we're still waiting on samples to come in, which is good news for both organizations, histologics and Foregen. We'll hopefully get a lot more samples from them from the UK, but there were some like bureaucratic setbacks, paperwork and stuff like that. So we're still working with them.
Will you publish the raw data from the histology studies?
Yeah, some of that will be posted, and I'll work with Ryan if we can post all that stuff for everyone to view and see. There also will be a paper coming out from the histologic study, so that will have all the information in it from our focal point of what is comprising what tissue is comprising the entire foreskin, specifically different areas like the frenulum and stuff like that. I believe we'll have that raw data out for you guys to browse at some point. I don't know exactly what platform that will be. I'll work with Ryan on that.
Is there any possible way for the animal and human trials to be done earlier?
From the perspective that we've talked about in some of the board meetings thus far, is that as much as we can do, from parts of the question earlier, as much as we can do during the human clinical trials, we're going to try to get done at that point. So we're trying to maximize the amount of time utilized. So for example, during the second part of the animal trial, the surgeon has permission to work on the cadavers to optimize that part of the procedure. And anything else that we can do at that time for approval, we will do.
When will the selection for the human clinical trial take place?
We're actually building a system that ensures that everyone's information follows all the HIPAA regulations and stuff like that. So like Enzo said, when we get closer to the clinical trials, there's a clinical trial selection period that's part of any large clinical study. That will begin around that time. And as Enzo said, it's not just a singular effort. The surgeon's working with the veterinarian, where we're trying to get a urologist on board. We're trying to find a psychologist to make sure that people are understanding the full changes that are going to be occurring for them. It's been quite interesting trying to contact other surgeons or trying to contact other medical professionals from our organizational standpoint. There's a lot of people that don't always respond or don't chat, and part of that's the stigma against what we're trying to do. Especially in the U.S. So I think that's a little bit additional information to what Enzo mentioned.
What is the updated estimation date for the human clinical trial?
We have to analyze the data, we have to see the results, we have to see if everything went well in the trial with the sheep. We have to see if we have to make more tests with the cadaver, because another thing that we are doing is trying to transplant the foreskin over the penis of cadavers, so we understand better how to do this. And so we cannot say it's going to be January of next year, but late next year.
Do I have to be an adult to sign up for the human clinical trial? How many people will be selected?
I suppose you must be 18 years old, and we hope to do the surgery next year. I met last night Elena Pondioli, the main scientist, and we want to do this to 25 people.
Will the human clinical trial be conducted in Italy?
We haven't thought where to make the trial yet, but yes, Italy is first in the list for many reasons, because the kind of doctors that we have involved at this project live all in this area. They know each other very well and they work together since many years. So they have a kind of also, they understand each other when they work. So at this point, yes, the patient, the foreigner patient, should travel to Italy to do the trial.
How will Foregen keep up with the demand? Will the surgery become available in countries other than Italy?
So, several of you have asked, like, if there's other surgeons, if there's other places the surgery will be offered. And I think that question ties directly into this question. Part of this is we need to make sure that we have a facility that will allow us to have outpatients, and we need to have a procedure for follow-up. So I think during the human clinical trials, if you want to put like real numbers on it, probably the second 2 quarters of next year, quarter 3 and quarter 4, we'll probably have a better idea of the timeline and real answers to like a real number to answer this question. But right now, sometime after 2024,
I understand this is...
Unfortunately, is the best I can really assume.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, William.
No, go ahead.
I understand this is a question that most of our supporters ask us, and it's obviously the main question. But what I want to say about this, which it's obviously it's an important goal because it means to me accomplish the mission. But don't forget what we are doing in the meanwhile. For instance, we are also funding another study in which from the histology point of view, we have hired an anatomy pathologist who will check how many Messner corpuscles there are, for instance, in the population between 0 to 15 years, then from 20 to 40, then to 40 to 60. So this is very important to have all this data before the trial. I think that it's important, the goal to arrive at the trial, but you have to understand that we are working in a way that we want to arrive to the trial with the maximum number of data available for us.
Will Foregen go for profit after the human clinical trial?
Okay, this is a question very important from the strategic point of view. My commitment to Foregen from the foundation to today is to arrive to a human trial. Once we have achieved this, but I think even before that we achieve this goal, we should start to think on how to serve 100,000, let's say 100,000. I don't say millions, but a lot of millions of patients. So obviously, the procedure we are doing now in the clinical trial is cannot serve all these people. So definitely we have before the clinical trial, and I think I was thinking today that these 5 months in which we request authorization to the Ministry of Health, it could be a good period for us to understand what we want to do with this for-profit company, because obviously, there are then the opportunities to have a company that can give the Foregen to millions of people. We have just to decide which kind of technology to use. I'm not sure that the bioprinting technology is at a level that it can be utilized for our purpose, because I think it's still a little bit not perfect. But we are looking around. I see there are every week and every month some great progress. Today I read a fantastic procedure of the University of Columbia, I think Columbia University, New York, of scientists that created a glove of the hand with skin, with the stem cells. So it's fantastic. So there are a lot of ideas that we have to control. So yes, the goal is to go for profit. after the trial, but we have to think to this before the trial to answer your question.
I can elaborate that on a little bit as well. We're not looking at becoming a for-profit at this time. We haven't really been talking about that or discussing that. Another option that Foregen might consider looking into, especially from what Enzo was just saying, there's a lot of logistical concerns when you start scaling up. So if we have, everyone in this call, that's a reasonable number. And then if we go to 100,000, 200,000 people, we're starting to see a delay in time simply based on what's, getting the samples that we're going to be using. So we're already discussing other methods. We haven't been exploring them quite yet. Like the surgery would still pretty much be the same, but where we're getting the donor tissue from. So xenografting, which would be like the use of decellularized animal matrix, bioprinting, using stem cells, and maybe not quite a bioprinting, but a different type of bioreactor system. These are all discussed. We're obviously focusing our efforts, our time, and the resources toward getting through human clinical trial. Because once we're through human clinical trial, we have that success. Now we can work on something else to support that. Another avenue that we might look into is keeping Foregen as a nonprofit, and then having another small startup company that we give information to, that we work with, or that some of the members might work with directly. That's all like future. These plans can change if we make some discovery or if something happens that we find works really well. All this stuff can change, but that's all kind of like conjecture for the future. Right now, we're still a nonprofit. Our mission statement's still the same, and we're still trying to accomplish the same thing.
What is the estimation for the procedure to be publicly available?
Yeah, research is slow because they are doing, step by step. They learn from the mistakes. We learned from the mistakes. But, I'm optimistic. I'm reading here that, if somebody's asking if the procedure will be available by 2030, well, yeah, I think it's too late, 2030, definitely too late. So we want to do much early. I just want to thank all these guys that are here. There are mothers, there are good guys with a good heart. And I know that somebody writes me in private. Sometimes I don't have time to answer because I'm dedicating most of my time between art and foreskin regeneration here. So just thank you, really thank you for your extraordinary support. I have a great gratitude for you. Bye to everybody.